this many kids coming in with single gunshot wounds to the head or chest, or in some cases, gunshot wounds to the head and the chest. That is a pattern sustained over a year throughout Gaza in the catchment area of almost every hospital in Gaza.
Several Palestinians who had been freed had numbers scrawled on their foreheads and other body parts. Hello, my name is Stanley Heller. Welcome to the Struggle Video News. We begin with an inspiring video about a Palestinian boy who had been disabled by an Israeli attack.
I lost my right leg, my right elbow, and I broke my left leg. I come to America for medical treatment with Hind time. My body has wounds and I lost a limb, but my heart's still full of life. Please don't get used to seeing us hurt. Get used to seeing us strong, successful, and full of hope. I may not run like before, but I can learn, laugh, and succeed. My injury didn't stop me, it made me stronger. We love life very much. With every pain, we become more successful to get better.
Last week, we had extensive coverage of the new film American Doctor. This week, the famed CNN journalist Christiane Amanpour interviewed two of the subjects, Dr. Perlmutter and Dr. Sidhwa. We urge you to watch the full 14-minute video segment and to share it. It's terrific material about the film and shows what those doctors saw. You can see the link to the interview at thestrugglevideo.org/Palestine-Israel, or just scan this QR code. Here's part of an interview I did with Dr. Sidhwa last year. I'll be speaking to Dr. Feroz Sidhwa. He's authored a major article that was printed in the New York Times on October 13th. It's called 65 Doctors, Nurses, and Paramedics, What We Saw in Gaza. 2 weeks earlier, he and those doctors sent an open letter to the president and vice president laying out what they saw in Gaza and asking for a meeting. Dr. Sidhwa is a trauma and general surgeon whose practice is in California. Good morning.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Your article opens with a description of Palestinian preteens shot in the head or chest, some as young as 5. One can perhaps understand children injured accidentally in bombings, but why would so many children be killed from one shot to the head?
Yeah, I just want to make sure everyone understands what we're trying, or what I was trying to argue with that. I'm not a war crimes investigator. I can't tell you why on a specific day a specific child got shot in the head. I'm a doctor. I'm in the trauma bay waiting for people to come in when they've been hurt. But when I was there, I did on average see a kid shot in the head every single day. So, I was there for 14 days and I saw 13 kids who had been shot in the head when I was there. So when I came back, I honestly didn't, number one, it's hard to keep track in your head of okay, it's Tuesday. While I've been here, I've seen 3 kids shot in the head. Now it's Thursday. I've seen 5 kids. Your brain, or my brain at least, doesn't work that way. But I kept the journal while I was there. And it certainly made an impression on me because it's, you don't see kids shot in the head that often. I'm a trauma surgeon in a very violent part of the country, in the United States, but you don't normally see that many kids shot in the head, obviously. But I just assumed it was my experience. It probably didn't generalize. But then I got back, and this is the story I told at the beginning of the Times piece. It's true. It's not invented. I got back and I went to a conference, and I met an emergency room doctor, and I just casually said, I couldn't believe how many kids I saw shot in the head. And he said, oh yeah, me too, just every day. I said, oh, okay. Well, that's two of us now. And he was at a different hospital at a different time than I was. So I'm like, okay, well, that's strange. So then I got the idea to look into it. And that's where our first open letter to the Biden administration came from. That was sent on July 25th, if I remember right, whatever the day after Netanyahu's, if you want to call it a speech to Congress was. And so out of that, I started to realize that actually a lot of people saw kids shot in the head on a daily, on a regular, if not daily basis. And that's a pattern, right? So the New York Times opinion editors reached out to me, and their opinion team, visual opinion team, reached out to me and said, is there a way to write something about this? So we came up with the idea of doing a poll of every healthcare worker that's been to Gaza since October 7th that I could find at the time, about what they saw. And it's the New York Times, so obviously they're interested in things that have a political impact, right? Or that have political relevance, I guess I should say. So we made up a poll of healthcare workers, and I don't remember the exact numbers. 65 people answered the poll in total, but almost everybody who worked in the appropriate setting, so the emergency room, the ER, the OR, or the ICU, almost everybody who worked in those settings saw kids shot on a regular, if not a daily basis. Like in my case, it was a daily basis. So that's a pattern. It's not an issue of this kid was shot in this way. This kid, it's just this many kids coming in with single gunshot wounds to the head or chest, or in some cases, gunshot wounds to the head and the chest. That is a pattern sustained over a year throughout Gaza, in the catchment area of almost every hospital in Gaza, anytime an international healthcare worker was around. And it's that pattern that I interpret to be as evidence of violence being deliberately directed at children. I have a very hard time, like I was on a podcast with a guy named Noam Dworman 2 days ago now. And he's an honest fellow, but he describes himself as being pro-Israel, which is fine. And he said, well, isn't it possible that some of them were shot by? I said, yeah, no. I can't. I'm not talking about individual cases. I can't. I wasn't there, and even if I was there, I wouldn't know what the hell happened. I'm just a doctor. I'm not some ballistics guy. I'm not a trained sniper. I don't know anything about it. I have a pistol license, but I don't really know anything about guns. And nor would it help if I did. I'm not a war crimes investigator. So he said, isn't it possible that this kid was shot by Hamas, or this kid was shot by the Israelis, but by accident, and it's not criminal? I said, yeah, no, that's entirely possible. But I have a hard time believing that a widespread pattern of shooting children, and we're talking about small children, not 15 or 17-year-olds, that they got shot too, but we're talking about that what we're focused on is small children. A widespread pattern in the catchment area of every hospital in Gaza, throughout Gaza for a year, that it's hard to believe that's not deliberate killing on the part of Israeli soldiers. Now, some people have gone on to say, oh, this guy says Israel's ordering its soldiers to. No. I don't have the slightest idea what Israel is ordering people to do. Furthermore, I can't imagine. It strikes me as just being credulous nonsense to think that Yoav Gallant gets on, the Israeli defense minister gets on his phone every morning and says, I want 12 children killed today. I want 9 children. That's ridiculous. He's a general. I doubt he's a psychopath. Or I think he's a general. I don't know. He's a defense minister, but I doubt he's a psychopath or a sociopath, whatever the right term would be. But nevertheless, Israel remember, this is a technologically sophisticated army. It's not some ragtag group of people running around. They have body cameras. From what I understand, I could be wrong again, I'm not a military expert. From what I understand, most of their sniper scopes have visual or have video equipment. Obviously, all of their drones have video equipment. And so they know who they're shooting. It's not like they're confused. They're well aware of who they're shooting. And furthermore, it's not like I'm the first person to report this. There's plenty of video of kids being shot in Gaza. It's not
I mean, sure, back in the Great March of Return in 18.
Yeah, and there's a long pattern that predates October 7th. Exactly. Like you can read B'Tselem's reports. Forget Gaza. where there's a so-called state of armed conflict. Go to the West Bank. Hamas basically doesn't exist there. You can read B'Tselem's report called on what they call the open fire policy in the West Bank, where they say, I can't remember the exact words. I read it a long time ago, but the words are something like, the Israeli military takes no action against soldiers who wantonly and recklessly fire into civilian communities, even when they kill children. It's not hard to understand, and this isn't new. It's just not. And like, the Great March of Return is something that I am. It's hard to. I think people who want to see the level of brutality that existed in Israel especially towards Gaza, but really towards Palestinians in general, before October 7th, really should read the UN's report about it. Israel lined up. Now, in this case, we know exactly who shot who, because it wasn't, like I said, it wasn't a state of armed conflict. The first, I can't remember exactly, but I think about the first 6 months of the Great March of Return, the UN report on it describes it as literally being a festival. There was people cooking food, there's dancing. It was basically what you would think of as in an American protest, like an American street protest against a war or something like that. There's no violence, nothing. Not even, just nothing that could even remotely be considered violence. The Israelis built berms, large hills for snipers to rest on, and they very calmly and systematically targeted women, doctors or medics, I guess you could say, journalists, crippled people. This is crazy. I mean, like the UN report.
There was an article in Haaretz that talked about soldiers having a competition to
that's a really important article to read. It's an interview with an Israeli sniper, and he says that they were collecting kneecaps. Yeah. So in other words, we were shooting people. The goal, and again, ordered and not ordered, who knows? But this is what they were doing, and they did it for years continuously. So it's hard to believe that it wasn't policy. Even if the policy was just to allow them to continue what they're already doing, that's the same thing as making policy.
Former New York Times reporter Chris Hedges back in 2001 wrote a piece in Harper's, talking about how the Israeli soldiers would shoot kids for sport. So this is
well, I'll tell you a story. When I lived in the West Bank for about, I can't remember if it was 6 or 8 weeks now, but in 2005, the summer of 2000, no, sorry, 2006, the summer of 2007, 2006 or 7, doesn't matter, early in the 2000s. And I lived with a Palestinian family, the Abu Hashash family. Musa was the dad. Musa was a field worker for B'Tselem, and the Fawar refugee camp was here. Route 6 was here, and his family lived on the hill across from Fawar. So his kids would walk down the hill every day, walk across the Route 6, and go to school. There's a sniper tower an Israeli sniper tower right at the entrance to the refugee camp. And Musa told me this story, and I had no reason to think that he's lying about this. There was a little boy during the height of the Second Intifada when there was a checkpoint and you couldn't drive into the camp. You had to get out of the car, walk across the checkpoint, and then get into another car. There was this little boy who would make a shekel by just running people's bags back and forth. Poor kid, very poor family, dirty, no shoes. He'd done this for months. And Musa said he's sitting there observing the checkpoint. Again, he's a field worker. This is the checkpoint that his children have to walk past every day to go to school. And he sees an Israeli soldier up there. The guy just walks down, gets down on a knee in the middle of the day. It's not nighttime. Place is full of people. Just gets down on one knee and blows that kid's head off. That is pretty extreme. Now, that's one case. We can't generalize on one case, obviously, but the point is that this is hardly new. It's very, I don't mean to, the reality of how Israel I always want to emphasize, this is my concern is not what Israel is doing. My concern is what the United States is doing by backing Israel. What the US and Israel have done to the people of Palestine is really not widely appreciated in the level of brutality and often sadism that's gone along with it.
As viewers know, Dr. Abu Safia is suffering from 20 months now in prison. But the mistreatment is spreading geographically. Take the case of Mazen al-Rintisti. He was not in Gaza at all, but in the West Bank. He was arrested in June. The doctor is nicknamed the Doctor of the Poor because he's well known for waiving fees, supplying medicine, and operating a clinic that serves as a refuge for low-income Palestinians. He was detained in a pre-dawn raid on his home in Ramallah. Prosecutors later indicted him for serving as chairman of the board of the Union of Health Work Committees, a Palestinian nonprofit that provides medical care to thousands of Palestinians each year. The Israeli government arbitrarily banned the organization. Saja Mishareki Baransi, the first lawyer to see Rantisi face-to-face since his arrest, said the physician has rapidly lost weight after receiving tiny portion of food that he described as unfit for human consumption, including moldy bread, almost rotten tomatoes, and uncooked hummus and foul-smelling rice. He also said 10 prisoners share his 6-bed cell, with 4 taking turns sleeping on mattresses on the floor. Prisoners receive no clean supplies and share 1 piece of soap for washing themselves and their clothes, while wet mattresses have developed mold and the hot cell is infested with pests. And remember, this is the West Bank. And hear from an Israeli minister in charge of police and prisons a proposal to assassinate 30 to 40 people in Gaza every night. This is a true face of the Israeli government.
אני רוצה להגיד שלום רב לכבוד השר לביטחון לאומי ויושב-ראש.
זה לא סוד, אני חלקתי על ראש הממשלה, אני חושב שצריך לעשות סיכולים ממוקדים בעזה, כל לילה להוריד 30-40. לא רק אלה שמסכנים אותך באותו רגע. אין, יש שם אנשים שהם לא בני חיים, הם לא צריכים לחיות, הם לא אנשים, גם אני נותן להם מחמאה שאני קורא להם אנשים. ואני חושב שאנחנו צריכים להשתקם, א', בטיפול, בעזרה, בחיבוק של עם ישראל.
Let's call this next section A Tale of Two Synagogues. You might have heard about the attack on the Reform Synagogue in New York City. A man violently attacked worshippers and damaged property. Mayor Mamdani condemned the attack. But instantly, Zionist leaders condemned Mayor Mamdani because of his criticisms of Israel. As it turns out, the disturbed man who was arrested for the attack was a, quote, pro-Israel Republican who wanted to convert to Judaism, unquote. That comes from the Jewish paper Forward. He was certainly not incited by Mamdani. Another attack on a synagogue took place, and you probably never heard of it. Vandals broke into Kol HaNeshama, smashed windows, damaged artwork, and tore down pride flags. Kol HaNeshama is one of Israel's best-known Reform congregations. It's in Jerusalem, and it had been previously targeted in attacks because of its support for LGBTQ community. Gilad Kariv, a Reform rabbi and member of the Knesset, called those responsible incited hooligans and accused the Israeli government of contributing to hostility toward Reform and other liberal Jewish denominations. This is a government that specializes in spreading hatred for free and delegitimizing the liberal Jewish streams, he wrote on X. Kariv also called on Jerusalem Mayor Moshe Lion to visit Kol HaNeshama and publicly stand with the congregation. The biggest group of Jews in the United States, the biggest denomination, is the Reform. But in Israel, they're despised by the Orthodox, who control the religious system and whose political parties are part of the government. Mayor Leon of Jerusalem has not said anything about the attacks on the Jerusalem synagogue. Well, here's some wonderful progress. I say it sarcastically. Israel has finally admitted that their forces killed Hind Rajab, several of her relatives, and the 2 Red Cross workers sent out to rescue her. It only took 900 days or so, and evidence like the wrecked car with 335 bullets in it, and no possible alternative explanation. So the Israeli justice system has admitted that Israelis did the killing and has decided to look into criminal charges. Don't hold your breath. In the same press release, the Israeli government excused itself for killing the World Central Kitchen workers in 2024 who were in elaborately marked vehicles and who had gone over their planned travel route with the Israeli military authorities in advance. The Israeli paper Haaretz discovered that after a recent West Bank raid, several Palestinians who had been freed had numbers scrawled on their foreheads and other body parts. That reminded some people of other prisoners with numbers tattooed on their arms, as in Auschwitz. Though if you say that too loud, you could be accused of crimes against the IHRA definition of anti-Semitism. However, Hanan Majadi in Haaretz wrote, "This is reminiscent of certain historical periods." Shortly thereafter, a response also came. The commanders clarified to the forces the gravity of the act, it was reported, and lessons were learned. Majadi writes, "Lessons were learned." It's hard to think of a more quintessential Israeli phrase. For decades, lessons have been learned here. After Palestinians are killed, lessons are learned. After detainees are abused, lessons are learned. After every act that was supposed to be an exception, lessons are learned. And yet the lessons somehow are never learned in time to prevent the next incident. The corporate media is noting that the U.S. government debt is now $40 trillion. About $9 trillion of that is owed to foreigners, mainly in Japan, Britain, and China. The debt is 5 times what it was just 20 years ago. The U.S. pays $1 trillion a year just in interest payments on the debt. But the current spirit is to cut taxes and spend. After supposedly winning the current Iran war, at last count 28 times, the military wants to raise its budget from $1 trillion to $1.5 trillion. Any other country on earth that went into debt like this would be severely scolded and deprived of the ability to borrow unless it went on a decade of austerity. But we go on and on like the coyote in the Roadrunner cartoon who can run over empty air as long as he doesn't look down. Also this week in the New York Times, an article with the headline Stagflation, the scourge of the 1970s, is back. Stagflation is a term that means prices are rising at the same time growth and jobs are stagnant. It had been a belief by economists that you couldn't have both at the same time. But that was proven wrong with a vengeance in those days. Now, affordability is a problem, while good jobs are not to be had. Adam McKay, who directed the films The Big Short and Don't Look Up, wrote a piece for Current Affairs. He says the worst lie is that we have time to fix the climate. It's a lie. A joint study by the Institute of Faculty of Actuaries and the University of Exeter, quoted by him, suggests that a 2-degree temperature increase, which we are hurtling towards, with no plans of slowing down, could result in 2 billion deaths. But a 2-degree hike isn't all that likely, not with the spigot wide open for oil exploration and AI. We're on a path to worse. McKay writes, the other scenario, which scientists now say, quote, recent data aligns with more closely, is a 3-degree centigrade of warming. At that level, the Exeter authors warn of up to 4 billion deaths. That's half the human race. And those authors were not talking about the year 2100, but about the next 26 years. But we'll end with something wonderful. This is a picture of a sunset from the planet Mars. The first such picture in human history. That's our program for today. I'm Stanley Heller for the Struggle Video News.